is moving fast. Let's break it down. Welcome to AI Assembled, where we curate the biggest AI stories and unpack what they mean to you. I'm Chris Doelle, bringing you the latest in AI so you can stay ahead of the curve. Let's dive in.
Well, hello there. Chris over at AI Assembled has just teed us up for a really important discussion.
Absolutely. And I'm keen to jump into it with you.
Yeah, we're taking a close look today at California's proposed Senate Bill 7. You might have heard it called the No Robo-Bosses Act.
That title definitely catches the ear, doesn't it?
It really does.
And it points straight at the big changes this law could mean for how work gets managed, especially, with AI becoming so much more common.
So our mission today, for you listening, is basically to unpack SB 7. What is it exactly?
Where does it stand right now in the whole legislative maze in California?
Right. And maybe the biggest question, what could this mean for businesses there versus, say, businesses elsewhere in the U.S. if it actually passes?
Exactly. And we've looked at quite a bit the official analyses, news reports, what supporters are saying, what opponents are worried about, trying to give you that balanced picture.
Okay, so No Robo-Bosses Act. Memorable name for sure. But let's get down to brass tacks. Fundamentally, what is SB 7? What are the basics we need to grasp?
Okay, so at its heart, SB 7, the official title is Employment, Automated Decision Systems. It's really about regulating how companies use AI, these automated decision systems, or ADS, when making workplace decisions.
ADS, got it.
Senator Jerry McNerney introduced it back in December 2024, and the main goal is, transparency and accountability.
When employers use AI for decisions about people's jobs.
Precisely. For employees, for job applicants.
Yeah.
The idea is to find that balance, right? Let innovation happen with AI, but also protect workers' rights. Make sure machines aren't just unfairly deciding someone's livelihood.
So it's not a ban on AI bosses?
No, not an outright ban at all. It's more about putting up some guardrails, necessary guardrails, supporters would argue.
Guardrails for robo-bosses. Okay. So why now? What's the trigger for this? Feels like something must be shifting pretty significantly in workplaces.
Oh, absolutely. The big driver here is just how much employers are already using AI, not just for, simple tasks, but to actively monitor workers, evaluate them.
Manage workflows, performance reviews, that kind of thing.
Yes, and sometimes even making decisions about who gets disciplined or even let go based on algorithms crunching productivity data.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a survey in 2024. It suggested something like 40% of workers have already had some kind of algorithmic management applied to them.
40%. That's a lot more than I might have guessed.
It is. And what's really striking and concerning is the disparity. That same survey found it affects workers of color much more, like 63% of Black workers, 52% of Latino workers, compared to about 35% of white workers.
Whoa. Okay, that's a huge difference. That definitely raises flags about, fairness and potential bias, doesn't it?
It really does. And that's a core concern fueling SB 7. The worry is that relying too heavily on these automated systems, these robo-bosses, could just amplify discrimination.
Or lead to other problems.
Right. Maybe lower pay if everything's hyper-optimized, maybe unsafe conditions if AI sets impossible quotas, and of course, unfair firings without any real human context or review. Our sources point to examples like Amazon, with reports of algorithmic productivity quotas and even automated firings tied to those metrics.
Oh, I think I've read about that.
And then there's this other angle, the rise of AI predictive tools like TerraMind was mentioned, systems that analyze tons of employee data.
What kind of data?
Well, sometimes even personal stuff like off-duty activity, financial info, social media, trying to predict risks like potential fraud or maybe even loyalty.
Okay, that sounds like a major privacy issue brewing.
Exactly. Huge privacy concerns, plus the risk of decisions being made based on data that's maybe totally irrelevant to the job or just plain wrong. So the rapid spread of AI management, the unequal impact, the potential for bias and privacy invasion, that's really the why now behind SB 7.
Okay, the picture's getting clear. It's tackling some pretty complex issues.
Yeah.
So what specific rules is SB 7 actually proposing? What would change on the ground for California businesses?
There are several key pieces. First up is advance notice. Employers would have to give written notice 30 days before rolling out an ADS system that impacts employment.
Notice to who?
To both current employees and also to job applicants. And the notice has to list the specific ADS tools they plan to use.
Okay, 30 days notice. List the tools. What else?
Second, and this is a really big one, limits on AI-only decisions. Basically, the bill says employers cannot rely solely on an automated system for those high-stakes decisions.
Like hiring, firing.
Exactly. Hiring, promotions, discipline, termination. For those, the bill demands meaningful human involvement. There has to be independent review, actual corroborating evidence. It essentially bans decisions made primarily by the algorithm without that human check.
So a human always has to be in the loop and have the final call on the important stuff.
That's the idea. Preventing purely algorithmic judgments on things that really affect people's lives and careers.
That feels pretty significant. What other key regulations are in there?
Another major part is a ban on certain types of predictive surveillance and using sensitive personal data. SB 7 would stop employers from using ADS to guess or predict worker behavior based on personal data.
Like the off-duty stuff, health, finances you mentioned.
Right. If it invades privacy or could be discriminatory. It also bans seeking sensitive personal info that's just not relevant to doing the job.
Yep.
Then there are data access and correction rights. Workers get the right to see the data that ADS has collected and used about them.
If it's wrong.
They can request corrections. So if an algorithm flags you based on bad data, you'd have a way to fix it.
This seems crucial for fairness.
Yeah.
What about when an AI does influence a decision, even if it's not the sole decider?
Good question. In that case, the bill requires notice of the AI-influenced decision and a right to appeal. If an ADS played a part, the worker must be told.
And they can challenge it.
Yes, they get 30 days to appeal. The employer then has 14 business days for a human reviewer to take another look.
And if the appeal is successful?
They have 21 days to rectify the unjustified decision.
Okay, so there's a process.
There is. And the bill also emphasizes human accountability. There needs to be a specific human decision maker who's ultimately responsible and can override the AI.
Makes sense. No hiding behind the algorithm?
Pretty much. Plus, there are standard anti-retaliation protections, so workers aren't penalized for using these rights. And finally, enforcement and penalties. The labor commissioner handles enforcement. Workers or their reps can sue. Public prosecutors, too. Penalties are around $500 per violation.
And it doesn't block local laws?
Correct. It sets a floor, not a ceiling. Local areas could potentially go further.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a detailed framework.
Yeah.
It's very clear why supporters see this as a necessary move. What are their main arguments boiled down?
Well, supporters really stress that this isn't science fiction, right? Algorithmic management is here. It's growing fast. Look at that 40% survey figure. They point to the real-world examples, Amazon, those predictive tools, as proof that harm is already happening. Worker fatigue, burnout, unfair job loss, discrimination based on totally irrelevant data points.
So the argument is about protection.
Exactly. Protecting basic workers' rights, dignity, ensuring fairness. They argue humans bring context, empathy, things algorithms just don't have.
And the bias issue.
That's huge for them. They believe SB 7 is vital because existing anti-discrimination laws aren't enough on their own when you can't even see how the AI is making decisions. You need that transparency the bill mandates.
So it's not anti-AI, but pro-accountability.
That's how they frame it, yes. Balancing innovation with accountability, letting AI be used but with guardrails. They'd say the cost of not regulating, of letting biased or unfair AI run unchecked, could be much higher in the long run.
Any key voices summing this up?
Lorena Gonzalez from the California Labor Federation put it pretty clearly. Critical decisions that affect a person's job and safety should have human oversight. That really captures their core principle.
Okay, clear case from the supporters. Now let's look at the other side. What are the main arguments against SB 7? What are the big worries?
The opposition, mostly coming from the business community, raises several concerns. A big one is that the bill is just too broad.
Too broad how?
They argue it covers basically all businesses, large and small, and applies even to AI uses that might be pretty low risk. They see major administrative headaches.
Like the notice and appeals.
Exactly. The 30-day notice, setting up and managing that appeals process, they worry about the cost, the time, and the potential for a lot more lawsuits, which, they argue, could eventually trickle down to higher prices for consumers.
Okay, so cost and administrative burden. What else?
There's a real fear it could stifle innovation, that businesses might just shy away from adopting new automated tools, even beneficial ones, because the regulatory hurdles seem too high.
Even tools that might help workers, like predicting turnover to improve retention.
Potentially, yes. That's the concern. They also push back, saying existing laws like California's Fair Employment and Housing Act, FEA, already ban discrimination.
And maybe AI could even reduce bias sometimes.
Some opponents argue that yes. that well-designed algorithms might be less biased than individual human managers in certain situations. The feeling is that SB7 is sort of a one-size-fits-all sledgehammer when maybe a more targeted approach is needed.
Focusing just on the highest risk stuff, like AI firing someone with no review.
Right. They'd prefer something narrower. The California Chamber of Commerce has been quite critical, calling the requirements impractical for businesses of all sizes and labeling it a cost driver. They want a much more tailored approach.
Okay, so we have these competing views. If SB7 does pass, more or less as it is now, what would the actual impact look like? For businesses, for workers in California specifically, and how does this position California nationally?
The impacts could be pretty substantial. For employers in California, definitely some big adjustments, new compliance steps everywhere that notice, handling data requests, running the appeals system.
More HR work, basically.
Likely, yeah. Need for more staff, or at least more training. Maybe new tech costs to make sure their AI systems are transparent enough, auditable. Businesses would probably be more cautious about rolling out AI for decision-making, maybe do more internal checks.
But maybe it protects them in the long run from bias lawsuits.
That's a potential upside, actually. Catching bias early could save trouble later. Overall, you'd probably see a definite shift towards more transparent, more accountable AI use in California workplaces.
Okay, and for workers, what's the impact on them?
For workers, it could mean clearer rights. Knowing when AI is being used, knowing how it might affect them, and having a real way to challenge decisions they think are unfair.
So, potentially more job security, more fairness.
That's the hope. That appeal process could reverse mistakes or injustices, maybe less feeling like just a cog watched by an algorithm, reducing that sense of dehumanization. It might push employers towards more thoughtful AI use overall, and potentially help narrow some of those demographic biases we talked about.
And nationally, California often sets trends.
Often does. If SB7 passes, California would definitely be out front in regulating workplace AI. That creates this patchwork, right? A tougher regulatory climate there than elsewhere.
Could that make companies hesitant to operate or hire in California?
That's the potential trade-off opponents raise. Added compliance costs, maybe slower processes. On the flip side, if it works well, if it seems to balance innovation and worker rights effectively.
Other states might copy it.
Exactly. We could see other states, maybe even the federal government, looking at California's model. So yeah, it could absolutely set a major precedent for labor law in this age of AI. It really depends on how smoothly it gets implemented and what the actual outcomes are.
So where is SB7 right now? You mentioned it's still moving. What's the latest?
Right. As of, late April 2025, it's still making its way through the process. It got introduced in the Senate late last year, passed the Senate Labor Committee in early April this year.
Okay.
And then it moved to the Senate Judiciary Committee. There was actually a hearing scheduled for April 29th, 2025. So right around now, basically.
So it's actively being debated, possibly amended.
Definitely. It still needs to clear that committee, then pass the full Senate vote, then go over to the state assembly for their whole process committee's floor vote.
And then the governor's desk.
And finally, yes, the governor needs to sign it. So its future is still uncertain, lots of negotiations likely happening behind the scenes. But it's being watched very closely.
It really shows how seriously policymakers are starting to take AI in employment.
No question. The outcome here in California could really shape the conversation nationally for years to come.
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. We've got SB7, the No Robo-Bosses Act in California. It's aiming to bring transparency, human oversight, and worker rights into the world of AI-driven workplace decisions.
While facing pushback from businesses worried about the practicalities, the costs, and maybe hindering innovation.
And critically, it's still very much in play in the legislature. That Judiciary Committee hearing is key, and the path ahead is still long. The story of AI regulation at work is definitely still being written.
That's a perfect way to put it. And, stepping back, it really makes you think, doesn't it? As AI keeps weaving itself deeper into our lives.
Yeah.
What other fundamental rights, what other safeguards might we need, not just at work, but across society? How do we make sure this incredibly powerful technology actually serves us all fairly and equitably?
That is the big question, isn't it? Something for all of us, especially you listening, to keep mulling over.
Definitely.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you for breaking down SB7 for us. It's complex, it's moving fast, and we really encourage you all to keep an eye on how it develops.
My pleasure. Stay curious, everyone.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's hand things back over to Chris at AI Assembled to take us out.
That's it for this episode of AI Assembled, but AI doesn't slow down and neither do we. If you found this insightful, follow the show, stay connected. Until next time, stay curious, stay innovative, keep exploring AI, and keep it real.
Join the Business Success Academy at freshmediaworks.com to connect with like-minded professionals, access essential resources, and stay ahead with the latest strategies for business growth. Visit freshmediaworks.com and click on the Business Success Academy logo to take your next step towards success today.